Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Why Eagles Why. Dave Bontempo, Pete Amato, Matt Boecker with you. We come into this after the Eagles had just lost to the Dallas Cowboys 40-34, but what a fantastic game on so many different levels as we now approach week 17. You know how we do the show, 4 quarters plus an overtime segment. Please hit like and subscribe to be notified about future videos. All right, as we break the huddle, quarter number 1. Matt, I'll come to you first because the Cowboys won. And I've got to say, that game exceeded my expectations. How did it look to you from that Dallas standpoint?
Yeah, I think we were all kind of in the same boat. I think, fans from both teams, fans from the Cowboys especially, people were, looking forward to this game as being a game that would go a long way in determining who wins the NFC East. But obviously, the Cowboys lost to the Jaguars week 15, so that kind of went out the window. So the Eagles had a lot less to play for, but obviously, from watching the game, both teams desperately wanted to win. We were kind of questioning whether the Eagles motivation standpoint going into the game, because of their lack of motivation to win, based off their seeding and what they had to gain from the win. But both teams were clearly very desperate to get the win. So yeah, like you were saying, like going into the game, you had the Cowboys losing to the Jaguars, so that kind of eliminated that NFC East, a lot riding on this game in that standpoint. So that was eliminated. And then the Hurts news came out, which obviously sucked because the first Cowboys Eagles game, Cooper Rush started. So people were looking forward to, okay, now both teams are at full strength. Obviously both teams are dealing with injuries, but at least at the quarterback position, they'd both be at full strength. We can, really get an idea of who the better team is. But I'd say like almost immediately into the game, the intensity ramped up, and I honestly forgot about both of those storylines, and it really became just more about beating your hated division rival. So, um, I'll have my time to gloat later. I'll have my time to laugh in Pete's face. But all that aside, it was nice that it went from going into the game, people were like like the division winning aspects out, Hurts is out, so it's not as hyped up as we thought it would be, but. Very quickly into the game, it became like an all-time classic game, in my opinion.
Yeah, Pete, the last thing a lot of people expected was a Gardner Minshew comes in, field goal, first offensive possession for Dallas, a pick six. Now, what are you thinking when the Eagles go up 10-0 against Dak and with that defense right away?
I think I'm thinking what everybody's thinking, and I don't think they're going to blow them out, but I think it's going to be a comfortable a win for them. Seeing how easy the Eagles went downfield, and then the Cowboys offense just looked a little lost in the first drive. Dak kind of didn't look like himself when he plays the Eagles. He like turns it on when he plays the Eagles. And I mean, it's insane that I feel like he becomes an actual like really good quarterback when he plays the Eagles. And I think that's with division rivals. I think it's going to help. But yeah, it didn't go like I thought it would. I thought the Eagles would be able to score on them comfortably, which they kind of did. But I just didn't realize they had so many mistakes, man. They just shot themselves in the foot so much. And in a game with a division rival, you can't even have one turnover, let alone 4 turnovers. I mean, it's just, after 4 turnovers, if you're still in the game, you're lucky. And the Eagles were actually lucky they were still in that game. I mean, 4 turnovers, the Cowboys got 20 points from those 4 turnovers. And then a couple of those turnovers were actually, the Eagles were driving. So imagine you flip that around and give the Eagles field goals on 2 of those. I mean, that's a big point swing. So you can't turn the ball over like that and expect to win. So at that point, I don't know, I just had a bad feeling, even at the end of the game, even before Miles Sanders fumbles it again. It's just, didn't have a good feeling that the Eagles just weren't on their game. And I wasn't worried about Minshew. Minshew did what he had to do to win the game. I mean, he didn't lose the game. The interceptions, you can say one was his fault, but you might say neither.
Well, they both could have been Quez Watkins' fault.
Yeah.
The ball
Quez Watkins has to fight for that ball. Yeah. And so, I mean, I knew it would be a good game. I just didn't know it would fall the way it fell. It was entertaining. I I didn't let it ruin my Christmas Eve like a lot of the Eagles fans. I mean, it's not going to ruin the players' Christmas Eve, so it's not going to ruin mine. But I mean, I would like to see a win there, so we could have just locked up that first place seed. And now I have to let Matt write on my site, which is going to be great. We're going to love that one. And he gets full reins of what he wants to do. I mean, I'm a man of my word, so he can write what. I mean, as long as it's not filled with curse words and stuff like that, which we'll see how
No
how heated
promises.
he is when he writes this.
And I'll refresh the people that last week that was the deal that was made between Matt and Pete, that whichever team wins, Matt will write on Pete's site, Eagles.com. Had it been the Eagles' victory, Pete would have been writing on how about them. So they both had their deal. Now, Matt, I'm going to come to you, and Pete, if you want to chime in after Matt on a particular thing, feel free as we close out this quarter. But Matt, one play that stuck out in my mind was 3rd and 30 to Ty, his first catch as a Cowboy, as a major turnaround of that game. But you also had a lot of stats and things that you noticed during that game. So why don't you take us through your overall perspective of what you saw?
I mean, yeah, that 3rd and 30 completion was one of the, maybe one of the Cowboys' best offensive plays this year. Dak threw it on a dime. It was about 50, 60 yards because I rewatched the highlight last night. He threw it from the Cowboys 20 and it landed in T.Y. Hilton's arms, like perfectly placed on the Eagles 20. And at that time, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the Cowboys were down by 7 points
They were
on that
down by
drive.
7, and there had been two sacks before
Yeah,
that. So this is
exactly.
like the Eagles are maybe about to get the ball back and possibly put this game
Yeah.
away.
Exactly. So it's easy to imagine had the Cowboys not converted that 3rd down, the way the Eagles offense was still moving the ball even without Hurts. They were, Mitchell still threw for 355, 2 touchdowns and rushed one in. So it's easy to see a world where if the Cowboys don't convert that 3rd and 30, they punt it away. Eagles get the ball, they either, bring it downfield, kick a field goal, make it a 10-point game, or score a touchdown, make it a 14-point game. And at that point, there's probably about 5-6 minutes left left in the game once that Eagles ensuing drive goes down, comes down and comes to an end. So it's easy to see a world where they essentially score the next drive and they win the game. So that was one of the best offensive plays of the year, just from T.Y. Hilton reeling in the catch to Dak Prescott throwing it on a perfect dime. But like Pete said, and this might actually be the topic of my blog, is Dak Prescott being the Eagles' daddy, because he's 8-3 career versus the Eagles. So I'm thinking that could be a potential blog topic. But no, I mean you guys touched on it before with Pete. That first interception he threw to Josh Sweat, especially I just came off. I just wrote a blog post last week defending Dak Prescott, saying any Cowboys fan who's blaming Dak Prescott for the Eagle or for the Cowboys struggles, you're not watching the games. I'm not sure what you're watching. So for him to come out on, super early in the game and throw a lazy pass that Josh Sweats picks up or, snatches, I should say, throws Dak to the ground and then runs it in for a pick six. I'm like, this is going to be a long day. But he definitely settled in. He completed 77% of his passes, 347 yards and 3 touchdowns. So all in all, I mean, yeah, the offense, the defense, both defenses struggled. Cowboys defense struggled, and the offense was really the catalyst that put the Cowboys over the top, obviously, based off the scoreboard.
All right, so now he's P Daddy, huh? Okay, we'll see how that works out through the world. We are going to conclude the first quarter with that. I'm going to start with Pete in the second quarter as we will look at takeaways, what each guy took away from that game going forward. Second quarter of Why Eagles Why, straight ahead. Second quarter of Why Eagles Why, the Eagles and Cowboys energizing their fan bases again with a fantastic game last week, making us look forward to what we will see possibly later. Pete, your takeaways when that game was over last week.
Well, taking away from what Matt was saying about the 3rd and 30, I'll lead off with that. That was just I can't really blame Gannon on the play design. It was a cover 2. It was a simple cover 2. You don't want a ball to get over your head. And it goes to show you that it's a big deal when you have a backup. The backup safety was Josiah Scott. He was the safety help for Slay. And Slay and Maddox have had a chance to kind of build a repertoire all season. He kind of knew when he was over his shoulder. Slay thought he had safety help. He should have had safety help. And Scott was just a couple seconds too late. I like Matt said, it was a perfect throw by Dak. I mean, if the ball was 1 foot in, Scott would have been there. It was just bad luck for Scott. I mean, he said the Cowboys got up to the line and quick snapped. I mean, that's not really a excuse when you're playing and it's 3rd and 30. It's not an excuse. You're playing a cover 2. Your safety help. I mean, I'm not an NFL player, but I mean, I know what cover 2 is, and I know what down and how much to go is. You don't let people behind you, and I don't blame Slay for that play. I mean, I don't blame him at all. So I'm going to blame Scott there. And moving forward, it definitely kind of now Eagles fans are starting to have their doubts because of these injuries are racking up with the Eagles. Lane Johnson, who is, in my opinion, I think he's the best right tackle in the game. Right now, I think he's a future Hall of Famer. The guy hasn't given up a sack in 2.5 years. It's unbelievable. And when he gets out of the game, you see what they can do. They can move Micah Parsons all over the place. I mean, when he's in the game, that they can kind of shift Mulatto's over there, and then Lane Johnson can take 2 guys. I mean, but Micah Parsons is a big threat, especially when we don't have our best tackle in the game, because the Eagles just have less room for failure there. So that's going to be a big hit moving forward. Hopefully he comes back.
Sounds like a weak team.
What's that?
Sounds like a weak team. You know, some teams just take the injuries and they deal with them and keep rolling. To other teams, they use them as an excuse. But I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
That's true. And you're talking about the weak Cowboys. Yeah. Well, that's fine. And we did roll with it because Micah Parsons, he disrupted a few things. He wasn't the one that stripped to get that fumble at the end. I don't know why people are saying he made that fumble. He didn't even touch the ball.
He did because he's going to bring down Miles Sanders for a tackle for a loss. And he made him shift, and you know he didn't force the fumble. He didn't punch the ball out himself, but he made the play that led to the forced fumble. So yeah, I know. Yeah, he didn't literally force the fumble, but he created the play. Yeah,
I get what you're saying now. Okay, no, there's no excuses. I mean, these guys have to step up. I mean, with the injuries, one guy on the line shouldn't do that. I mean, that just kind of worries me moving forward. How talented these the backups are. I mean, Scott, they need to move Scott out of the safety position. Obviously, he's just not comfortable there. Maybe he'll be more comfortable after full week of practice. I don't know. But are they going to get CJ Gardner back? We don't know about that. So it's just a lot of question marks. But like he's saying, excuses with injuries. It comes down for me is the thing I've been saying since day one. I think Gannon had a horrible plan. He had a horrible plan. Anytime he was in zone, 24 throws, 24 completions for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns when he played a zone, a soft zone. And I feel like when Gannon gets into those pressure situations, he falls back into that zone defense. And we have the defensive backs where we don't have to do that. I mean, it's just head scratching to me that he's so afraid for quarterbacks to go over the top. But any half decent quarterback is going to dink and dunk their way down the field in that soft zone defense, and they're going to eat up clock. And that's what the Cowboys did. The Eagles didn't punt the ball, but they weren't on the field a lot because the Cowboys just ate up the clock. I mean, Minshew did good while he was in there. Offense looked good while they're in there, except for the mistakes, the turnovers. But this guy needs to do a different play call. I hate like being a dead horse. Everybody's saying, oh, it's not the coach's fault, but that's a big stat. 24 passes into Jonathan Gannon's soft, weak zone. He completed all 24 passes for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. Any of the man times, I think it was like three batted balls, and like I think they got the interception with the man. So I don't know. It's just I think it's pretty.
I think this is an interjection point, Matt. I'll get to you in a second. But Pete, here you go with Gannon. With the bends but don't break. At the same time, they lead the NFL in sacks.
I know.
So they can apply pressure when they decide to. That's an unusual combination. Because if you're a bend but break defense, you probably have no pass rush. This has been a bend but break defense at times, and they lead the league in sacks.
Yeah, and I think that's credit to our defensive line, the talent on our defensive line, and our running, our run stop, because teams are less inclined to try to run the ball up the middle because they can't do it all that well against our defensive line. And yeah, anytime people have an argument for Gannon, they basically say, oh, we're the best defense in the league. We're the best defense in the league. Yeah, that's behind us. That's in the past. Like we're moving forward now, and we need to play to teams' weaknesses. And playing to Dak's strengths of just putting a soft zone and letting him. He's an accurate passer, 10 to 15 yards. He's an accurate passer. Past 20 yards, it gets a little iffy for Dak. I mean, even the Cowboys fans can see that. I think Matt can agree with me there. Yes, he threw a good deep ball, but when Dak has to start stretching the field and making big plays, that's when he makes mistakes. And the Eagles didn't do that. They didn't attack his weakness. They just let him basically sit back there and kind of 5-7 yards passes all the way up the field, touchdown. So I mean, it's obvious to me, but they are the number one defense. They're 13-2. But that means nothing now. That now they have 2 more games. They have to win at least one, and then they have the playoffs.
Well, they'll probably beat the Saints, you would figure, and then they can kind of massage the lineup here for the injuries. Now, Matt, coming out of it for the Cowboys, I guess there's the expectation that, there won't be enough time to catch the Eagles because they need too much help. But what did that win do for the team, do you think? And what is their psyche and your takeaway on where they are now heading into the Thursday game all of a sudden against the Tennessee Titans in prime time?
Yeah, I think this game should go a long way in helping their psyche. If I had to imagine, I mean, 2 weeks ago, or week 14, I believe, they had needed a game-winning drive at the end of the Texans game to get the win there over one of the worst teams in football. Last week, you lose to a Jaguars team, who actually doesn't look bad now, but still, that's a game they should go. They're a better team than the Jaguars. They should get that win. Lost it in overtime, so they've been getting crapped on by the fans, by the media. And I really think they just needed this win to kind of get the monkey off their back and, prove themselves that they still can't beat the best teams in the NFL. I saw a stat today. They're the only team in the NFL to have beaten 3 11-win teams. They've beaten the Vikings, who are maybe fluky, but they still have 11 wins. They beat the Bengals early on in the year, and then this Eagles win. So they've proven they can beat the top, some of the best teams in the NFL. But I think overall, this game definitely should be helpful in, improving their psyche, kind of getting back on track. And then looking forward to the Titans game. The Titans have dropped, I believe, 5 in a row.
Yes.
They fired their GM earlier this year. I believe they just lost to the Texans.
They did.
This past Saturday. Derrick Henry might not play. I saw he didn't practice. He was a DNP today. So obviously, if he's out, that's pretty big. Ryan Tannehill's injured. And so they'll probably be starting Malik Willis, who could be a good NFL quarterback one day, but they don't really have a lot of weapons around him. So the Cowboys need to avoid, because that's another thing, while they've beaten 3 11-win teams, they've also had a tendency to play down to their competition. And that's definitely, will be the case this week. They should be heavy favorites. I haven't checked the betting lines, but I imagine
last I saw it was 9. It was up to 10.
Yeah. Huge.
And,
double digit favorites. I believe they're on the road on a short week.
Yeah.
So yeah. All in all, though, just to recap the Eagles game, I think they definitely needed that win, and also they could be an amazing storyline, amazing matchup to cover if the Cowboys and Eagles play in the playoffs. So I imagine if you're a Cowboys player, you're gonna meet these guys on the road at Lincoln Financial Field, and going into the game, if you say to yourself, well, shit, we lost to this team twice in the regular season. We lost to them with Gardner Minshew, a quarterback. Jalen Hurts wasn't even starting the second game, and we still couldn't beat them. So I think having that win should definitely help their psyche, because if you're going into that matchup, had the Cowboys lost, I can't imagine their confidence would be at a very high level.
I'd like to jump in there.
Yeah.
So saying all that, I'm still not worried about the Cowboys. If I see them in the playoffs, a lot had to go wrong for that Eagles team to barely lose that game. We were still in striking distance at the end of the game. It's nothing against the Cowboys. I think they played one of their best games, and Eagles played one of their worst games. And that, to me, says a lot. Are the Eagles going to play one of their worst games again if they see them in the playoffs? Hopefully not. I mean, the Cowboys, I think they're a solid team. I think they're 7-1 against teams that were 500 this year, but I still don't think they're on the level of the Eagles talent-wise. I mean, even after that win. So a lot had to go right for the Cowboys that game. And a lot had to go wrong for the Eagles. And that's what happened. It's football. That stuff happens. No excuses. They lost that game, but moving forward, I think if the Eagles don't make the same mistakes and if they meet them in the playoffs again, I would still be comfortable to say the Eagles should win that game, especially if it's at home. I just think that the Eagles, just like with the Cowboys played the Jags, I feel the same way. The Cowboys should have won that game. They could have won that game. I feel like the Eagles against the Cowboys, they should have won the game. They could have won that game. They didn't. So it's a loss. They have to move on. But yeah, so moving on going forward, I think if they just need to stop shooting themselves in the foot in the playoffs. I mean, and if they do, then they deserve to lose because if a team makes mistakes like that in the playoffs, then they shouldn't even. I mean, then you shouldn't be a playoff team anyway.
We talked about it last week. The game did lay right for Dallas. The Eagles had a lot that they've been way above, and they had a game that they could not win if they had to. And I thought they played well with Minshew overall. Dallas was opportunistic at the end, and the bettors were very happy that Dallas got a cover at the end. That spread was 4.5. And then a couple of late field goals. And I think the purpose of the game, and Matt, I'll leave this final comment on this quarter too. I think that the best takeaway of that game is that it energized us for what we might see in January, because the Cowboys could be facing Tampa Bay or Carolina. And you would expect that they're going to come out of that game. Then it's if they could get past the 49ers, which is going to be tough for anyone. But so if we see the Eagles and Cowboys, it might be for the entire conference. I mean, we'll see how things jumble up. So I think they gave us faith that if we see that game, we'll have a lot to look forward to in January.
Yeah, and I think the Cowboys, for them, obviously a big day at the win. But for me to feel confident, I still wouldn't feel confident that I'm going, at current state, as the things currently sit, I wouldn't feel overly confident about them going into the link with Jalen Hurts at quarterback. Because obviously I don't want to discredit the Cowboys defense. The first fumble that Gardner Minshew fumbled the handoff, that was an unforced turnover. That was just a mental error. But the other 3 turnovers, they were forced. So I'm not going to totally discredit the Cowboys and take that away from them. But obviously Peter's right. You can't just bank on 4 turnovers, every game. That's not going to happen, especially once Jalen Hurts is back in the game. It totally changes the way they play and their game plan. So, if Jalen Hurts starts, on Saturday, unlikely that they have, 2 interceptions. But as it currently sits, I still wouldn't feel overly confident about the Cowboys going into the link, getting the win in the playoffs. That's not to say things can't change. I think I just need to see them take care of business against the Titans, and then take care of business in Week 18 against the Commanders. If they can do those things, if they can avoid making it, sweat it out, end of game, you need like a game-winning drive from Dak, or you need the defense to stand up on the last drive of the game, I could change my mind and I could feel better about that. So not to say things can't change, but as it currently sits, I still do need to see more from this Cowboys team before I'd be picking them to win outright at the link in the playoffs, and especially in the NFC Championship.
All right, a lot to look forward to if it materializes that way, and we'll have more straight ahead in the third quarter of Why Eagles Why. Third quarter of Why Eagles Why. Dave Bontempo, Peter Amato, and Matt Boecker from How About Them. We're so happy to have Matt to represent the Dallas viewpoint. And there's a lot of excitement around all these teams. Pete, couple things. First, we want to talk about the idea that if the Eagles beat the Saints, they would have the bye all the way through. So what do you want to see them work on between now and whatever that first playoff game is? And little reaction, what do you think about the fact that the Eagles and Dougie Peterson with the Jags both in charge of first place teams?
Can't say I'm surprised. I mean, I think we all love Dougie P. I mean, he brought us our first Super Bowl. I think he'll go down as one of the most beloved coaches in the city. I mean, he was here for a short time. I feel his firing was unwarranted. I was kind of upset when he was fired. I think a lot of people were, because of what he did with this team in a short amount of time. So I'm always going to cheer for him. Good for him. And I hope he goes as far as he can. I mean, he has a great quarterback. This Trevor Lawrence is turning out to be what everybody thought he was going to be. And when Doug Peterson has a good quarterback, the possibilities are endless what he can do with the rest of the team. So yeah, good luck to Dougie P. Go as far as he can. But if they face the Eagles in the Super Bowl, we're going to smash them. But yeah, I feel that on the other hand of what I see the Eagles doing in the next, if it's granted they make the playoffs, I want them to beat the Saints, because if they don't beat the Saints, then that's when people get a little worried. And people start to get, I mean, because then you're playing the Giants, which you dominated, but I mean, but
They're going to
it's a
beat
division
this
game. It's a different team. I mean, it's just a different game. It just is. So, granted, they get that number one seed. I want to see them stay healthy. I want to see them change that bend but don't break defense just a little bit. I know he's not going to change his whole game plan, but when you play against half decent, it doesn't have to be a great quarterback. Half decent quarterbacks, they're going to eat you alive, especially if it's a close game. I mean, it's all about clock management. If you keep the Eagles off the field, if you keep Jalen Hurts off the field, that's how Washington beat us. That's how the Cowboys beat us. Washington didn't do anything better than us, but they just played keep away, and that's what Cowboys did. And we didn't punt the ball, and so I just want to see their defense kind of tighten up a little bit. I want to see the mistakes tighten up, and I don't want to see any more big injuries to big players, because that's just going to make things more confusing in the playoffs.
I'll throw one more to you before I go to Matt, because this comes up now, in that the idea that if they clinch early, now if Jalen Hurts is pushing to play against the Saints, they'll go back and forth with that. But now, if they beat the Saints, you've got the Giants, you don't need them. You've got the bye week, you're not going to play. Mm-hmm. And then you've got the playoff game. Now, if he doesn't play against the Saints, that's a month where this guy doesn't play. So how do you figure all that into the mix? And what is the challenge in keeping him sharp? How do you think they do that?
I mean, I can't really talk about rust and everything. I mean, I can look at the stats and see if rust is an actual factor for quarterbacks. I think the easiest way to do it is to give him the rest, keep him fresh. I wouldn't mind seeing him take a few weeks off before the playoffs. If you want to get the rust out a little bit, yeah, you put him in a quarter against the Giants. I mean, if we have everything wrapped up, you put him in the first quarter against the Giants, let him get some rust off, take him out. And I think it's a pretty easy fix for me. Everybody's worried about the rust. I'm not worried about the rust. I mean, if he's an NFL quarterback, he should be able to, and you're playing in the playoffs, you can be rusty in the first three, and you can give yourself a couple 3 and outs, but after that, there's no excuse for rust. I mean, if first couple series, okay, first series, I'll give you the rust factor, but I don't think that's going to be a problem for Jalen Hurts. Great, because he's just that kind of player where his work ethic is unbelievable. I mean, he's a totally different quarterback than he was last season. I doubted him last season because I didn't think he was going to be able to turn into this kind of quarterback, but he did. I mean, he worked his way. So I don't think Russ is going to be. It might be an issue for some quarterbacks, but I don't think it's going to be an issue for him.
Okay. Now, Matt, if the Cowboys are going to work their way back into a matchup with the Eagles, assuming the Eagles beat the Saints and they're number one, and assuming Dallas is a wild card team, let's talk about their road going forward and who you would like to see Dallas play in the opening round of the playoffs, in which they would be a road team against a low-level division champion.
Yeah, like you said, yeah, the Cowboys are essentially locked up pretty well into that fifth spot. So they'll most likely, it's almost all but a guarantee they'll face the winner of the NFC South, which is actually a close battle. So the Panthers are currently trailing the Buccaneers, but they play this week, and the Panthers beat the Buccaneers earlier in the season. So the Panthers control their own destiny. If they beat the Buccaneers this upcoming week, and then they win in Week 18, they can clinch the division title. So it comes down to between those teams. It's most likely Cowboys will either square off with the Bucs or the Panthers. And as weird as it sounds to say, I'd almost rather face the Buccaneers, which is, we talked about it last week, how crazy it is, the thought of preferring to face Tom Brady on the road in a playoff game. But that's kind of the state of the Buccaneers right now. Their last week 14, they lost 35-7 to the 49ers, got their asses kicked. And then week 15, they lost. I think they were up 17-0 at home versus the Bengals. They ended up losing 34-23. And then just on Sunday on Christmas, they barely squeaked out a win on the road at the Cardinals. They won 19-16 in OT, but Trace McSorley started the game. So, while it is Tom Brady, it's still kind of scary to look at that team with Tom Brady at quarterback. And, considering they were Super Bowl champions not that long ago, I'd almost rather face them because the Panthers are kind of coming on strong. They have good wins. They just beat the Lions this past week, who the Lions are, they dug themselves a really deep hole and they had to basically win out to make a playoff spot. I think they still have a chance to make the playoffs, but they blew the doors off of the Lions. Deontay Foreman ran for 165 yards, which is insane. They beat Seattle a few weeks ago, so it's kind of crazy. They have a few good players. I know they have Burns on the defensive line's a good young player. They have J.C. Horn at cornerback, so It's strange to say, and it's strange that I'm, even saying it out loud, but yeah, I think I'd rather face the Tampa Bay Buccaneers than the Carolina Panthers right now.
Man, I totally agree with you too. And you
Yeah, I
mentioned
agree.
Trace McSorley, and how about this? They trailed Trace McSorley by 10 points in the fourth quarter. Not only Trace McSorley, but they were 10 points behind them, and they don't have that explosiveness. I mean, they've been very fortunate at home, winning these games very, very late. I don't think they'll be able to do something like that against the Cowboys, like they did against the Rams, like they did against the Saints, getting a touchdown with 3 seconds left. I think that I think the Cowboys beat the Bucks, and I think that the Panthers could be more dangerous. I agree with you on that, and yes, you are one of the first people to say that, but I think you're right on with that, man.
Yeah, and especially with the Panthers, the Cowboys, uh, run defense has not been stellar this year. I think the Eagles ran for less than 100. I think they ran for about 87 yards. They ran for less than 100 versus the Cowboys, but even still, the Cowboys' run defense has been less than stellar this year. So seeing Deontay Foreman go out there and run for 165 yards versus the Lions, admittedly the Lions have a worse defense than the Cowboys. Even with the Cowboys' run defense struggles, I would still say that the Cowboys run defense grades better than the Lions run defense. Um, so yeah, it's kind of it's weird to say, but it's kind of a scary matchup with the Panthers there. And especially with the Cowboys, I mean, it'd be the most Cowboys thing of all time to go on the road, face a sub 500 NFC South winner, and then lose in the first round of the playoffs, given the Cowboys, playoff success in the last 20 or so years. So it'd be a very Dallas thing to go on the road and do that. But yeah, I'm almost rooting for Tom Brady this weekend, and it feels weird.
And I think you'll have a lot of company with that. And like you say, they play each other, so we'll find out. We'll have more straight ahead in the fourth quarter of Why Eagles Why. Fourth quarter of Why Eagles Why. You know that we have Matt with us to give a Dallas perspective, and they always want to give Pete the key to the city in Dallas after he called their fans and the players cockroaches. So some of that stuff has been going on all season. So Matt, as we start the fourth quarter, I will invite you to take the next step in this rivalry.
And I'd be glad to take it, Dave. Pete's been crapping on CD Lamb all season long. From the time we first recorded, I think the Cowboys Eagles played about week 4, 5, or 6. I remember he mentioned it in that recording that CD Lamb isn't a true wide receiver one. He's not a top tier player or top tier wide receiver. He made mention of it again last week before, ahead of the Cowboys Eagles game. And he continues to just discredit him. And I think CD Lamb must have heard the recording. He must have watched the episode because he went off. He had 10 catches, 120 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. And just season long, to look at like a more season long stats. CeeDee Lamb has the 8th most receiving yards in the NFL. He's tied for the 5th most touchdowns in the NFL. So Pete, I'm interested to hear Pete's rebuttal. Pete can keep crapping on him. He's probably gonna have some rebuttal lined up right now. But him saying that CeeDee Lamb's anything less than a wide receiver one is just Philadelphia bias, clouding Pete's judgment. And that's fine. That's part of Pete's charm, is that he kind of lets his Philadelphia fandom get in the way of reality sometimes. So we'll see if he continues that right now. But I mean, I just don't see how you can you can't keep denying that CeeDee Lamb is an elite wide receiver one in the NFL.
Well, Pete in Philly, that's fighting words in Philly.
Yeah, well, I never said he wasn't a good wide receiver. But a number one wide receiver on a team, I said he wasn't. That's why they got him, and they believed he wasn't. I mean, fans were trashing him the first half of the season that we still need another one receiver. I mean, I think fans talked about Odell Beckham more than they talk about CD Lamb on Twitter because of how average CD was. Yeah, he has the 5th most touchdowns, but he still, to me, doesn't break the top 15, top 20 wide receivers in the league. I mean, at one point, Aguilar had the 5th most touchdowns in the league too in 2017. So, I mean, look what he turned out to be. So, I mean, if I can see him doing this on a consistent basis and not just 4 or 5 games of him having these unbelievable games where he gets like 10 catches over 100 yards, multiple touchdowns, yeah, he will become an elite number one receiver. But I mean, he hasn't done it a full season. Fans, you guys had to get T.Y. Hilton for him to even get open. I mean, it's like if he was a true number one wide receiver, Jerry Jones wouldn't have been running around trying to get another wide receiver, another one wide receiver to CeeDee Lamb's slot receiver. I mean, CeeDee Lamb is a great slot receiver. But his longest catch all year was 39 yards. 39. That's a 39-yard catch. I mean, is that he's not dangerous. That's not dangerous to me. That's like a slot receiver. That's a really good slot receiver. He's just not that he doesn't have the breakout speed. I mean, he's not like AJ Brown where he can just out physical somebody. He's just a good solid receiver that, I mean, I would be glad to have on the Eagles as our number 3 behind and number 4 behind Quez.
Behind Quez.
I'm kidding. That was a joke.
You're gonna credit Quez Watkins after he got mossed by J-Ron Curse, and then the ball ripped out of his hands by Brian.
Obviously, that was a joke. Quez is not on the Eagles, but Quez is number 3 receiver, probably number 4 on some teams. He just has breakout speed. He's nothing special.
I will interject that for CeeDee Lamb, Matt, some of his better production has been after Dak Prescott came back, because with Cooper Rush, it was hard to get that type of chemistry with certain players. But and there was a guy, I believe he was the number 1 draft pick for the Cowboys, so they had high thoughts for him, and they now have that is a reasonably good receiving corps.
Yeah, and I think
to give Matt credit, I know wide receivers do take a little time to develop. They did take time to develop chemistry. When they threw Cooper Rush in there because Dak was injured, it killed CeeDee Lamb's offseason work with Dak. So yeah, I get it. It's going to take a little while. Right now, CeeDee Lamb is on an up trajectory, but I just still don't think he's currently an elite top 10 receiver in the league. He might have some stats that are in the top 10 or even in the top 5, but I just don't. I don't see a team being confident in CeeDee Lamb being a number 1 receiver. Well, half the season they're going around searching for a number 1 receiver is T.Y. Hilton and Odell Beckham. I think they can see that. And and if he holds up as this number 1 receiver and keeps putting up all these numbers all season for consistently, then I'll be wrong. But I've yet to be wrong on anything ever.
I just don't think that
was joke
fans and I just don't think that the fans and Jerry Jones wanting, pursuing Odell and pursuing other wide receivers like T.Y. Hilton, I don't think that really, in my opinion, takes away, or I don't think that discredits CeeDee Lamb as a wide receiver 1. If you look at across, I mean, I think we can agree Justin Jefferson's one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. He has other playmakers. He has Adam Thielen as his wide receiver 2. He has other playmakers on his team. Tyreek Hill, I'm sure we'd all agree, another top 5 wide receiver. He's got Jalen Waddle, who's, arguably another top 10 wide receiver. Even the Eagles, AJ Brown is their top receiver. He has Devontae Smith, who's been he balled out again on Saturday. So I don't think that the Cowboys pursuit and the fans wanting another, wide receiver weapon on the offense, I don't think that's a slight against, people saying, oh, CeeDee Lamb can't get it done by himself. But I think because they lacked Michael Gallup, came back from injury, I think about week 5 or 6 from an ACL injury. He hasn't really looked like he has yet to look like his old self this season. Then they had Noah Brown, who was a fringe like practice squad player, but he played well in the preseason. He played well with Cooper Rush. They meshed really well together earlier on in the year. So, I mean, I think it's less of a discredit to Lamb and more just any team that wants to go far in the playoffs is going to need more than one. Because when Cooper Rush was starting, they were just defensive would just bracket coverage. They put heavy coverage onto CeeDee Lamb, and that's kind of why his numbers weren't great to start the year out, because Cooper Rush is a far more limited passer compared to Dak Prescott. Prescott has a lot more of the intangible, a lot more skills, quarterbacking skills. So it was a lot easier to kind of bracket coverage CeeDee Lamb, put him in a box, then make other players beat them. But and yeah, I mean, imagine if Dak didn't get hurt, he'd probably be even higher. He'd probably be even higher than 8th most receiving yards and 5th most touchdowns. He'd probably be top 5 in both those categories if Dak played the full season. You can kind of see, like, when you look at where Dak came, when Dak's come back, the offenses produce at a far higher level. And then almost every player, including Lamb, has also, produced at a far higher level since Cooper Rush went back to the bench and Dak Prescott started again.
Yeah, but I mean, I can see that, but in the NFL, it doesn't hold up when you can't force feed a receiver, I mean, a number one receiver you can force feed and get away with it. I mean, they've been force feeding CeeDee Lamb since Dak came back. I mean, he has 135 targets in 2022 already, and there's still 2 years, and there's still 2 games left. That's like over 20 targets total of the whole season last year. So I mean, it's just not, in my opinion, it's not sustainable for this guy to keep getting these numbers without force feeding them. And I think if you have to force feed a guy that many times, then I think it just takes away from the rest of the offense, in my opinion. And I do think that they were looking for a number one receiver to kind of, I think they're looking for, Odell's not going to he's not going to get you think Odell's going to go on a team where he doesn't get the most targets? I mean, I just think that's why they were looking for Odell. Maybe that T.Y. Hilton's just a kind of a breakaway receiver. He's kind of in the end of his career. But yes, CD definitely has impressed me. He's better than I thought he was going to be. But in my opinion, and my opinion means nothing, it remains to be seen whether he can be those guys that you say, like when you name the Justin Jeffersons, the AJ Browns, the Chase Youngs, the Amari Cooper at one point. I think I just don't put him in the same conversation as those guys yet. But
okay, we can agree to disagree. I heard Pete say that he thought that CeeDee Lamb's doing better than he thought he would do this season, and I'll take a minor victory there. So yeah, we'll agree to disagree.
And here's a wild card intangible for whenever the teams meet is that Dak Prescott has had some nice rocking chair syndrome, a lot of time to throw the ball, great protection from his line, and not a lot of pressure on him. Games where he has been pressured a little bit, he might crack. So we'll see if the Eagles are able to do that. Jalen Hurts, if you put pressure on him, he's going to run the ball. He can run the ball better than Dak Prescott. But here's something that will bring both of you guys together, and I think a lot of people, after game 1, here you go. Dallas had lost Dak Prescott and game 1. The Eagles had barely beaten the Lions, Pete, who nobody thought was going to do well this year, and they were playing the Minnesota Vikings on Monday Night Football. From that point, did we really think that we would be talking about 2 of the absolute best teams in the NFL this late in the season? I'm not sure if I did. How about you guys? Did you think that we would be at that point?
If you even look back at our old videos, I give Dallas, the Cowboys, a lot of credit. After the Dak situation happened, I mean, I thought their season was over, especially how they looked, just their team, how they looked in general. That first week after Dak gets hurt, you're like, okay, this is going to be more of a rebuilding year for the Cowboys, and the Eagles may have a shot because the Giants were supposed to be kind of good. The Commanders, you never know with them. They had Wentz. But yeah, the Cowboys, I would have never guessed that they would be here. To be honest, I thought the Cowboys last season, I was more worried about the Cowboys in the beginning of the season than this season, especially after Dak got hurt. But they fought back. Cooper Rush played solid, and he got them through those games. And they got a couple of key guys back that were injured. And they were able to stop the bleeding when they needed to most. And I think that's what the Eagles, I would say they kind of got away with this year, is because they didn't have the crazy amount of injuries as a lot of NFL teams usually have. And they haven't had to overcome those crazy injuries. And now they kind of do. So we'll see what the Eagles are really made of. If guys like Lane Johnson and Avonte Maddox, Gardner Johnson, if those guys are out, a playoff game, 2 playoff games, we'll see if the Eagles have that dog in them like they did in 2017. 2017, they had tons of injuries. I mean, they were losing they missed their first, their starting left tackle, Hall of Famer, most of the season. I mean, they lost Wentz, who was the MVP of that season, basically. So we'll see. I mean, I think that both teams want to win. Both teams are going to be tough playoff opponents. So, I mean, it's going to be fun to watch, especially I'm rooting for the Cowboys to win in the playoffs, because I would love to see the Eagles-Cowboys play in the playoffs. That would be insane. That would be so much fun, especially coming from the media side. Maybe as a fan, a lot of Eagles fans would be like, oh, you're rooting for the Cowboys. I mean, I wouldn't say like I'm a crazy fan where I'm like, no, Cowboys, I don't want them to lose. I don't want to face them. No, I think it would be great. What a great story. I mean, two guys, Dak and Jalen Hurts, who have been doubted by the entire media, coming together, and they nobody would have thought that the Eagles and Cowboys would be where they are this season. So it's a good story.
It's a great rivalry, and we'll visit more in the overtime segment. Overtime on Why Eagles, why we put everything in. Final thoughts. I think both the Eagles and the Cowboys take care of business this week, and maybe an emphatic victory for the Birds in the put-away game, which top teams do. They win this game, they're number one all the way through. How about you, Matt? Your thoughts on what we'll see immediately here?
Yeah, I think just moving forward, looking to week 17 for the Cowboys, they're facing the Titans. The Titans don't have a ton to play for going into week 17 because it really comes down to them for making the playoffs. That week 18 matchup. So with a lack of motivation, and even Derrick Henry, I think the line we were just saying is about 10, Cowboys minus 10. So people are not expecting Derrick Henry to play because it really does just come down to if they can beat the Jaguars, who are also vying for the top spot in the AFC South there. It really comes down to that week 18 matchup. So I think in the immediate, the Cowboys I think they'll be motivated to just kind of keep playing well and continue playing good football going into the playoffs. In terms of seeding, they don't really have much to play. I mean, they have much to, and they can still take the NFC East from the Eagles if things really go wrong for the Eagles, but that's obviously unlikely to happen. So assuming the Eagles get it done this week against the Saints, I think the Cowboys still immediately just have things to play for in terms of just keep continuing to play good football, getting good habits going into the playoffs. On the Texans side, and they're expecting, it looks like most likely Derrick Henry's going to be out, especially based off that line. Number one, and then number two, Ryan Tannehill's out for this game. I think he might return in the playoffs. I believe he had surgery last week. He's the Titans starting quarterback. So Malik Willis will be starting this week against the Cowboys. He has yet to throw for 100 yards in a game this season. He started a few games. His highest total was actually last week when the Titans lost to the Texans. He threw for 99 yards, so he almost scratched that triple digit passing yards mark. But I mean, without Derrick Henry, there's not a huge threat in the rushing game. And even with Malik Willis starting, I think he could be a good quarterback one day, but that's not gonna be next week. So I mean, they just don't have a lot of offensive threats. They've dropped 5 games in a row. They fired their GM earlier this year between the Henry injury, between the Tannehill injury. I have to imagine morale is at an all-time low in the locker room, with the media, with the fan base. So this is a game the Cowboys definitely need to go into Tennessee, take care of business, because not only are they the better team with considering all those injuries, but just to kind of keep good habits, continue playing good football going into the postseason.
All right, Dak Prescott versus Malik Willis. Who do you like? All right, Pete, how about your closing thoughts here?
Yeah, I agree with you guys for the Tennessee game. I mean, I don't see Tennessee scoring more than 10 points that game. They don't score points anyway. You go down their season, even games they won, they barely squeaked out. I just don't see them scoring 2 touchdowns on the Cowboys defense, especially with Derrick Henry out. So that 10-point line is actually, I like the look of that 10-point line. I mean, I would definitely take -10. I think it's going to be 24. It's going to be probably 24-10, something like that. And with the Eagles going against the Saints, again, I just don't see the Saints being able to score that much on the Eagles defense. No matter if Scott is playing or Maddox is not playing, but even if Jalen Hurts isn't playing, we saw what Gardner Minshew can do. I think he's a serviceable quarterback. I think he could be a starter on a few other teams in the NFL. I mean, he's never really lost his spot to bad play, kind of bad luck, but not bad play. And so I think the Eagles, I mean, it's a 7-point game right now, 7-point line. Yeah, the Eagles, I think, win that game easy, 34-14, something like that. I don't know, 28-14, something like that. But yeah, so I think both teams get it done. And they think they get it done comfortably. With that said, let's remind you, Matt won the bet, the Eagles Dallas game bet. So he's going to be able to write a blog story about any topic he wants on eagles.com, IGGLES.com. And we'll announce when we're going to do that on Twitter, but it'll probably be after the New Year's. kind of get a fresh start. Everybody's back at work and miserable, and the cockroaches will all be out and give me able to read.
We'll be happy. You might be miserable. The Cowboys fans should be
Yeah.
happy. I
We'll be
think.
able to read the trash that's going to be on that. I'm just kidding. If I didn't trust Matt as a good writer, obviously I would never agree to this. Matt is a writer for howaboutthem.com. If you're a Cowboys fan, even if you're a football fan, it's a good site. They're not overly biased, and it's a good read. So kind of looking forward to seeing what he has to say. So,
All right. Matt, thank you for joining us throughout the season, and maybe we'll see you again during the playoffs because the Eagles and Cowboys could be doing it again. Pete, always great to see you. So for all of us here, thank you for joining us. Please remember to hit like and subscribe to be notified about future videos. For Pete and for Matt and for Bill Gelman, who will be with us next week, this is Dave Bontempo saying so long. Why? Eagles, why?